Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Jim is doing us a little favor and keeping the rain away for a few minutes here while we do our short service. So I hope all of you are in a place where you can either hear or see. Either one is fine. There are some people who are streaming this, so we're going to try not to move around too much as to keep that to a minimum where the streaming people have to stand. So we're going to have a very short service here, about 35 to 65 minutes, I think, right? Barb, I was just kidding, it's 15. That'll be followed by military honors and taps. And if you're familiar with taps, it's usually a trumpet that plays taps. But ever since I met Jim 30 some odd years ago, he said, I want echoing taps at my funeral. And it was a huge joke forever and ever between us. Every time we saw each other, you got those echoing taps? I'm like, yeah, I got them. Not even thinking that today we're really going to use them. So I have two really good professionals here that are going to help us out with that today. And after that's done, then the family's going to have a short reception over at the Legion Hall, which is kitty corner from here. You can go in the red door and up the steps. If you need the elevator, you go around the back. And a few of Jim's favorite things are over there that you can help yourself to and then share some memories. So if you'd like to begin.
Thank you, Renee. And good afternoon to all of you. I've had a wonderful opportunity here to meet some of Jim's old friends, and I've met some new friends, and I've made some new friends. So on behalf of the Nelson family, I'd like to welcome all of you. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Barb, Jim's wonderful wife, for just short of 52 years. His wonderful children and their families, Rob, Wayne, John, Ben, Amy, and Andrew. On behalf of Jim's brothers and sisters, his older sister Catherine, Bobby, Chris, Nancy, Ken, of course, their wonderful families, as well as Jim and Barb's grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. I thank you for being here to honor a life well lived. Jim was many things. He was a faithful husband, a devoted father, grandfather, and uncle. He was a decorated Vietnam War veteran, and you all had the opportunity to view some of those awards that he earned while a soldier in Vietnam. He was very civic-minded. He was a firefighter in Neshota for 33 years. He was a dedicated teacher at Arrowhead. He was a successful businessman. And most of all, my brother Jim was a friend to all. Jim was born in 1946, and our mom and dad lived over on Burton Avenue at the time. And
North Avenue.
No.
North Avenue.
Burton Avenue.
North Avenue. You grew up right up the road from North Avenue. They moved.
Okay. Anyway, when Jim and I were 3 or 4 years old, like Jim was 3 and I was 5, and it would rain outside, and we would play inside. And what we would do is, I still have this childhood memory of our mother doing the ironing, and Jim and I on the floor with hammer and nails, and we were going to make beaver houses. For all of you who know what a beaver house looks like, it is a hodgepodge of sticks put together. That's what our beaver houses were on the floor. And the amazing thing, I was 2 years older than Jim. Jim's beaver house was always better than mine. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where he started life as a builder and contractor. And then when Jim was 5 or 6, then we moved to North Avenue. And our dad was an outdoorsman. I think many of you know that. He raised golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers. He hunted pheasants, ducks. He did a little fishing. And Jim and I followed in his footsteps. Jim loved the outdoors. And we fished for minnows, in Bark River behind the house. We went to Nagawicca Lake and tried to catch a northern or a panfish. And Jim also always had dogs, and he loved dogs. And he grew up with a Brittany Spaniel. We used that Brittany Spaniel to go over to the Jefferson Swamp, as we called it. We hunted pheasants over there. I had a beagle. We hunted rabbits behind Arrowhead. And it was a wonderful time in Jim's life. And I'd just like to share with you the most successful hunt that Jim had as a young man. He was 16 years old, and he and his Brittany went alone over to Jefferson Swamp, and lo and behold, on a pond out there were 2 Canadian geese, and Jim got them both with his Winchester 410 shotgun. And he brought those geese home, and my dad made sure that every person in Heartland knew what his son had done. And Jim was always a worker. At age 12, he had a paper out, and that was the Milwaukee Journal when it was an afternoon paper, that some of you might remember. His route was on Hill Street and North Avenue. Jim also worked for Heartland Hardware. That was when it was across from the old community hall on Cottonwood Avenue, I believe. And he also worked for Herb Johnson. And Mr. Johnson was a good friend of Mom and Dad's. He was a contractor, a builder. Jim worked for him, and I like to think that that's where he began his serious apprenticeship on becoming a contractor and a builder. Jim graduated from Heartland Elementary. He attended and graduated from Arrowhead. 4 years later, he graduated from Stout State with a degree in industrial technology. And a wonderful, wonderful thing happened after Jim graduated. He married the love of his life, Barb Young, in June 1968. At that time, if some of you folks can remember back to the late 1960s, the war in Vietnam was going hot and heavy at that time. And what happened to many young men happened to Jim. Jim was drafted. He was drafted in August of 1968. I was drafted a short time later. So both of us served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970. Jim was to the south down in the Mekong Delta, and I was in the central part of Vietnam. I think many of you who filed through here had a chance to see those wonderful awards that Jim won. Jim was a courageous soldier, a courageous soldier. The award that Jim was most proud of was the Combat Infantry Badge, the CIB. All you had to do to receive the CIB was to be in the infantry and to be in combat. That award united Jim with all his fellow infantrymen. It equalized the playing field, if you will. Jim was discharged in 1970. He returned to Stout in 1973, received his teaching degree, and he majored in industrial education. Jim returned to his alma mater, which was Arrowhead. He taught shop. He also coached track until 1978. And Jim instilled in his students how to succeed academically and how to succeed, most importantly, at life. Jim enjoyed teaching, but I still remember one morning, he and I were having coffee, and he said, "Dave, I have a dream." And Jim's dream that he shared with me was to become a contractor and own his own business. So in the late 1970s, he left teaching to follow that dream. And for the next 42 years, he was a builder and a contractor. He owned James R. Nelson Roofing and Remodeling. He owned Plank Road Cabinetry in Neshota. And during that time, that Jim was a contractor. His employees were friends, as well as fellow workers and employees. His contractors were friends first, contractors second. So were the subcontractors. Jim made many, many friends among his loyal customers, which enabled his business to be a success. Jim was also very proud to teach his sons the trade. He was proud to serve beside his fellow firefighters who are here today represented. He served there for 33 years. We all know that Jim suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a result of his combat in Vietnam. He suffered with that malady for over 40 years. Only the strong ask for help, and Jim was one of the strong. He asked for help, and he received that help from the Veterans Administration in 2011. And the next 8 or 9 years were the best of his life. Look what Jim accomplished in spite of PTSD. A loving husband of Barb, just short of 52 years. A loving father, grandfather, and uncle. A loving brother to each of his 6 brothers and sisters. A loyal friend to all. A man of character and compassion and loyalty. A man whose word was his bond. Jim did more than work. He also enjoyed life. And Jim was always a hunter. He hunted deer with his friends and relatives at Steve and Bobby's cabin up there in central Wisconsin. He also enjoyed hunting solitarily. And this he did many times at his friend Al Brown's house, where he went out and tried to slay the deer. And Jim and Al Brown's son Michael came to Alaska to hunt caribou, where Jim and Al and his son were successful. And Jim said that was one of his most wonderful and memorable hunts. He hunted pheasants with his loyal dog and companion, Jordy Nelson. He also enjoyed gatherings of family and friends and canoe trips with his family. He was a role model to his children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews, and to all he knew. I believe that my brother Jim is in heaven now. And what he's looking down and he's saying is, Dave, get on with it. These are busy people. They've got things to do and places to go. So in closing, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here on this rainy afternoon. It's very, very gratifying for the family, for all of you to be here. Special thanks to our honor guard, who is going to step up here in just a few minutes. Thanks for the use of their building across the street. Thank you very much for the fire department, which have showed up to show their respects. Thank you, Renee, our funeral parlor director, for the arrangements. And Jim, thank you, my brother, for living a life well lived and well said. Thank you all.
Honor guard, get up. Port arms. Ready. Aim. Fire. Aim. Fire. Aim. Fire. Present arms. Ready, pounce!
On behalf of the President of the United States, the United States Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for loved ones' honor and faithful service.
Center guard, right face. Forward, arms. Forward, march.
This concludes our services here today. Thank you so much, Dave. Those were wonderful words. And I was just thinking while you were talking, this little portico here that you all are by, Jim did that. And Jim did the front porch. And Jim did a lot of stuff in there. So thank you, Jim, for everything you've done to me throughout my career also. So please join the family across the street and share those memories and a little bit more time of fellowship.